This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips, and we help assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. I'm joined here today with a very special guest, John Gumas from Gumas. Hi, John. How are you?
Hi, Daniela. Nice to be here.
It's so nice to have you today on the podcast. I'm very excited to have this episode with you, but just to get started and break the ice, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us some context about you, what you do for anybody listening who is not familiar with who you are.
Sure. I am the founder and CEO of a full-service branding and digital marketing firm by the name of Gumas. Surprised by that name, right? So we have been in business for 40 years. In fact, this is our 41st year in business. What we do for our clients is, as a full-service branding and digital marketing firm, is really help them grow their business. And we take them through every step of the way, from the beginning, understanding who they are, what makes them different, why an audience should care about them, all the way through to helping them grow that business to whatever lengths and heights they want to take it.
That's incredible. I mean, 40 years is a really long time. So you're obviously someone who's very well versed in the industry, already understand a lot of the ins and outs of it, right?
Yeah, it's an industry, as a lot of your viewers probably know. It's a pretty interesting industry. It's a fun industry, but it's changing industry, and it's going with the flow. But it's been a fun 40 years, I'm happy to say that the company's doing better than it ever has. It just continues to grow and do very, very well.
That's great. Actually, that leads to one of my first questions, which is, when I was doing research on you and your company, and I was like, should I have him on the podcast? I was immediately interested in you because of the spin that you have done to your company, which is, I mean, you work specifically with challenger brands and you help smaller brands compete with industry giants, which to me is insane. That's a very competitive space to like be in. Most people that I have spoken to, especially when they focus with, like, smaller businesses, they wanna sort of steer away from being, related to bigger businesses or competing directly with them, and they would rather, sort of create more local SEO and more localized marketing and, um, content marketing and stuff like that. What inspired you to get into this specific field that I think is very competitive and very daunting for most people?
Well, I think what you just described is what every company needs to do, but it's how they go about doing it. So, 40 years ago, we set out to, in fact, we invented the term challenger brand marketing. That's a trademark term to us. I wrote the book on challenger brand marketing called, believe it or not, Challenger Brand Marketing. That's the second book, but it's really about it's no longer a concept. It's an actual methodology, where if you are up against any company that has more resources than you, most people think of resources as money. And you're right, that usually is what it is, but it can also include, they have more retail stores, they have bigger sales force, they have, more products that are, or they're better, their brand is better known, all of the above. You're a challenger brand, you're up against someone with more resources. And challenger brands can be any size, right? Pepsi, right, is a challenger brand to Coke, right? Avis is a challenger brand to Hertz. It doesn't matter what size you are, but what does matter is if somebody is outspending you or has more resources in any capacity, what you can't do is go head to head, right? If you go head to head, you're going to lose. So the whole challenger brand methodology is a very strategic, very methodical approach to how you build a company, using the resources that you have and maximizing the resources that you have to take you to that next level to grow and grow and grow. Because everyone has a unique position, everyone has a unique selling proposition, everyone has a niche, and everyone needs to understand what that is and message it in a way that only they can message it.
That's actually, yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, Pepsi is obviously, a smaller brand than Coke, but I wouldn't really call Pepsi a small brand. But
I didn't
obviously,
call them a small brand. I call them a challenger brand.
yeah, I think your terminology of saying, like, a challenger brand and how you've obviously coined that term, it makes so much more sense because you wouldn't really call it a small company or like a, like an underdog by, like, any business standards. They're obviously huge, and then the owners of Pepsi are doing just fine. But, it definitely, when you compare it to the bigger industry giant and, like, the person that the ruling industry, which would be the Coke, it totally, it makes so much more sense. Now, I wanted to ask you because you mentioned how, you sort of, like, can't go up against them directly, right? But for our listeners, could you break down why challenger brands need different strategies than these type of market leaders and what these strategies can actually be in a more tangible, way? Especially when we're talking about very competitive markets, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in our world, I'm sure your world as well, there is no market that's not competitive. Okay. Every market is competitive. Every client we've ever had is in a competitive space. But here's the one thing that we see and really is at the core of challenger brand marketing. Most companies, and again, most of our clients are, small to mid-sized companies, right? They're not the Pepsis, they're not big companies. So challenger brand marketing is even more critical for them. So the one thing that is probably the issue we see the most is when most of these organizations think of marketing, they immediately think of, okay, where do I put my message? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Is it okay? We kind of go, wait, time out, time out. We need to step back because we strongly believe the most important thing a challenger brand can ever do is understand who they are, truly understand who they are, and understand what makes them different, and then articulate that. Be able to articulate that, describe who you are, what you do, what makes you unique from everyone else, and ultimately what's in it for the person that you want to talk to. You need to go through the process. We have a very thorough process to discover and identify exactly what makes them unique, truly what makes them unique, based on market data, based on customer data, based on all these different touch points, and not based on guessing or assumption. So that's the first step we do. And that's probably the most critical step in the challenger brand process is really understanding that. Because once you have that message in place that not only resonates and differentiates you from everyone else, it also it gets folks to want to engage with you. So because think of this, you can spend all the money you want in all the different media sources you want, but if you're not saying the right thing, it's not going to work. So that's why the first part of the challenge brand marketing approach is understanding what it is you need to say and understanding what makes you different and understanding what makes you unique. And that's a very thorough, deep dive analysis to get to that point. Because once companies, especially with challenger brands, are at that point, that's when everything starts to work. And unfortunately, most companies don't go through that process, or which is mostly the case that we see, most companies assume they know that. They assume they know that. And 40 years, every single time we've done this, and this has been many, many times, you can imagine over the 40 years, every single time, what our clients think is not what their customers think. What our clients think they need to say is not what our client or their customers need to hear them say. So until you kind of line those up, right, it's never going to work at full at capacity. So challenger brands need to understand that they have very limited resources. So their resources need to generate the greatest response every single time. And that's how you
Right.
get to that point.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things is, your resources so much smaller than a big market, right? Like a big giant in the industry who can like sort of afford to try random things that make no sense. Or who can just like kind of joke around or focus on more like getting an image out there whilst, challenger brands need to focus on getting and driving sales and growing a little bit more. And I actually wanted to ask you, which I mean, you've been doing this for 40 years, which is very telling because I think 40 years of working in this industry can really give you perspective of how much it has changed in that much time. Um, I haven't even been alive for 40 years. So, I can't even imagine, but I feel like from
Wow.
what I've seen change in the time that I have been sort of conscious, I would say, of marketing and, how it works and sort of seeing how the industry has changed. In a few years, it's been very rapid, right? With things like AI and social platforms and, consumer behavior changing a lot more nowadays and e-commerce sort of plummeting, not plummeting, that means, but you know what I mean, like rising, um and all of these things that are sort of influencing the changes in marketing, I can even imagine all the stuff that you've seen happen in 40 years. Um, what are the biggest shifts that you think you have seen in all of that time? And how do you think, specifically for like smaller brands, it is to adapt?
Well, what has changed, okay, is the delivery vehicles, right? What I mean by that is the way we get our message in front of the people we want to see, or we want to see it. That has changed, right? You just look at, I mean, 40 years, and you just made me feel really old, by the way, when you said you weren't even born yet. So thank you for that. Uh,
Sorry, I was going for
wow.
you're so experienced.
I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing a bit. But that's what has changed over the years, right? I'll take your listeners way back to when there was traditional TV and radio and newspapers. Right, I'm going way back. I think this illustrates my point, right? To where now you're fast forwarding, and those vehicles are becoming more and more obsolete. And for challenger brands, and even for many marketers, those vehicles just don't make sense anymore because you have so many other options. That has changed dramatically. But what hasn't changed, and I don't foresee this changing at any time soon, is how you create a message, because our business is really simple. It's not about the delivery vehicle. So that's part of it. All right. It's mostly about, it's talking to a person. It's telling a person of your product or your service. And it's trying to convince that person in a very reasonable way and a fast way that they need to engage with you or buy your product because you're telling them what they need to hear. So that process of almost one person talking to another person will never change, right? It will never change. But how we get that message to that person, that's what's changing. It will always change and evolve, and that's where we need to, from a technical perspective, understand. But just from a basic perspective, from a challenger brand marketing concept perspective, the message has to, will not change, and how two people talk to each other, how a brand talks to people, and how that brand needs to develop its own personality, needs to create trust and establish credibility, and all of those things that will not change. It's just, the changing that we see, like I said, it's how that message gets out there.
Yeah, like the channels are different.
Channels, exactly, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm referring to, is the different channels change, and they'll always change, and they'll adjust, and even the ones that we use on a regular basis, those adjust, with time and consumer need and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I now that we're talking about messaging and, storytelling and essentially just kind of the importance of defining a brand's essence, when it comes to a challenger brand, how can they craft compelling brand stories that resonate with consumers? I think I want to ask this question because I feel like we have such a surplus of brands for any any product, any service, any software that you could possibly think of. I think I could probably Google it and I will get so many different options for like different companies that are doing it. And with so much saturation, I think it can be so much harder nowadays to stand out. I know it's always been like that, but I don't know, I feel like a few years ago it wasn't so oversaturated as it is now. Maybe that's just my experience. How can brands actually make themselves compelling enough to stand out in such a competitive market?
Well, I would agree it's saturated in terms of organizations, but I don't think it's saturated in terms of organizations that have truly created a niche and truly have identified, what makes them unique. So they can own that position, they can own that niche. That's the one thing I would say that most companies haven't, because what we see, and I see this time again and again, especially when we're working with new clients, they assume they know. And it's such a normal thing to have happen, because when folks start a company or been in a company for a while, they live it, they breathe it every day, they understand it. So it's literally impossible for them to step outside of their organization and look at it from the outside in as a prospective new client would. Okay, so because think about it, like on your website, we believe when someone comes to your website, you have 7 seconds. That's a 5 and a 2, 7 seconds, right, to get somebody convinced that they're in the right place. And if you don't in that 7 seconds, they're leaving. Okay, so that's just an illustration. The messaging, it's so important. So most organizations that we see that we've worked with over the years truly believe they know and understand what that is. And what they have to do is go through a very structured process that is non-biased, that really helps understand who they are. And you gather that data, and you gather that data by interviewing your customers. You gather that data by interviewing folks within the organization. You gather that data by analyzing your competitors to see what they're doing and what they're saying. But the key to this is the questions. And that's kind of our secret sauce is, we develop kind of a scientific approach to asking questions so we can extract the real answer. So if I'm trying to find out from you, Daniela, like why you're going to buy, I don't know, this pencil, right? Why you're going to buy this pencil. I'm not going to ask you, well, why are you going to buy this pencil, or what do you think? I'm going to ask you some really unique questions that get you thinking about how you went about buying this pencil, how you went through the process of figuring out what it was. And ultimately, what we're trying to find out is, what are the words we have to say to you to go, it's exactly the pencil I'm looking for. How did you know that's the pencil I want? So that's the process, right? That it starts with. And once we get through that, now we're ready to start marketing. So I would say most organizations, you feel it's very competitive because you really have never gone through that process of understanding truly, I mean, truly, truly, truly what makes you different, and how does that relative to your target customers? Because once you do that, now everything works. Everything starts to work a little better, more efficiently. And for challenger brands, all right, yeah, you're here and your big competitors are here, but our approach is, right, you're here every day, every week, every month, you're taking a little baby step for further growing. And as you look at growth that way, it becomes a very realistic tool, and a very, very realistic objective to grow your organization that way. So that's, in a kind of in a nutshell is the approach to it. And it's not guessing. It's not assuming. It's not throwing money at things. It's not throwing up your arms and saying, okay, we're in a competitive market, we can't do it. No, that's baloney. We don't accept that. There is a way, and we have the formula to do it.
Yeah, I think like I guess when I look at it from the consumer perspective, I see if I like search some kind of product that I want to purchase, let's say something like, I don't know, a yogurt, right? And then immediately a bunch of yogurt brands pop up and they're all kind of claiming the same things. They're all saying the same thing. And I think for you as a consumer, it can be like, well, what's the difference? So what you say makes a lot of sense because then it's like, well, what does it matter if it's this brand or the other brand? And they're all just yogurt and they're all saying the same thing in different fonts. Mhm.
Yeah,
And
but
then it's
there
just like
are.
for the cheaper version.
Yeah, and that's that's a really interesting statement when you said the cheaper version because,
Mm.
right? Think about this. If a company really hasn't gone through the process of understanding what their brand is and articulating how that brand differentiates and how that brand connects, then you are competing on price. Because we believe a brand is kind of this idea of what something costs you to make versus what someone's willing to pay for it. So if you don't have a brand, then all you're selling is price, and on a lower price point, cheaper price point, and that's a race to the bottom. What you want to do is sell on the uniqueness of your brand, the quality of your brand, how it resonates and how it differentiates in the market. That's what you want to sell on, because now price becomes less of an issue. People they seek you out, and you're not a product company, but you're a brand company with products. That's ultimately where you want to get to. And otherwise you are selling on price, and that is a dangerous place to be unless that's your model.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense because like I said, I mean, if nothing stands out at the end of the day and it everything feels the same, a consumer is just kinda gonna, like, do whatever and just think of like, well, it's everything is the same, but this one is like $1 less expensive, so I might as well get that one. Um, and but if someone presents to me like different yogurts and then they tell me like, oh, this one, they tell me like this great story of this guy who worked really hard to start his business, and then they tell me that like he also makes it handmade and like this yogurt is made from the goat of his house. I don't know. I'm coming up with random ideas. Then I might be like, okay, I want to support the guy and the goat. I might buy this yogurt. It totally
Yeah,
makes
and again, that's if the goat yogurt guy did his research, he would have learned that that's what differentiates his brand from the others, and that's why people want to buy his product, and that's what makes his brand unique. So then ultimately the yogurt, the goat yogurt guy, uh, can probably sell his product for more than the others because he has established what makes him unique, what makes his brand special, and what he has established that in a way that is true, that actually resonates. It's not a guess, it's not an assumption, it's true. Because if it's not true, then the market's going to see through that very, very quickly. But yeah, I mean that's a good example of why that would be critical.
Yeah, I think with like increasingly smarter consumers, I think that's also happening. It's crazy how much the consumer is sort of waking up to marketing strategies and just like how marketing works. Whereas I think before, and I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm too young to talk about this, but I feel like before people weren't as aware of marketing being done to them. Um, and I feel like nowadays people are demanding to be like, well, you need to like disclose that this is an ad. You need to like explain that this is marketing. I know that you're trying to sell. Like I don't know. That's my experience with sort of consumer behavior changing, I think.
Yeah, you're right on. And in my book, I have a full chapter dedicated to the best way to sell is not to sell. Because think exactly what we just said. All of us, as consumers, we're all smart. We all have tools. We can research anything we want, right? So when somebody, is trying to sell us something, right? The moment we feel someone is selling us something is the
Yeah, you're like,
moment,
whatever.
yeah, the moment we start to lose trust, the moment we don't maybe believe what they're telling us, the moment we kind of start to tune out a little bit. So you can't sell. It's all, ultimately at the end of the day, this is all about selling. Right. But it's how do you do it in a more thoughtful way? How do you do it in a way that it's not selling, but it's giving someone information that they really need to hear, or telling them something they really want. But you got to understand what that is first, right? And then articulate it in a way that is still believable and trustworthy and credible and all those things that it needs to be. Yeah, because the moment they think you're selling is the
Yeah,
moment they,
shut you
you
down. You're just a sleazy salesperson. Yeah, they don't care.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, John, I wanted to ask you because I feel like we kind of touched upon the fact that there's new channels for marketing nowadays, but with all of the different options that people have today, like SEO, social media, influencer marketing, paid ads, email marketing, more traditional avenues like billboards and stuff like that. For challenger brands, which one do you think is the best avenue for them to invest marketing dollars, especially when we're talking about people who have very limited budgets?
Yeah, that's such a hard question to ask right or answer right now because every company is so unique. Okay, every company is so unique. But I'm going to try to answer it, and I'm going to start by saying whatever a company does, everything they do needs to work in harmony. It needs to work together. And there's certain things in terms of timing that may change things that, in terms of what you say, what you do. But I would argue that almost any vehicle will work if you're saying the right thing. And so I'm going to turn that question on you a little bit and say it's not about which vehicles work. Because what I said earlier, right? You can try every vehicle you want and you can spend as much money as you want. All right. But if you don't have your message crafted, developed properly, researched properly, crafted to where it's unique, it speaks to who you want to attract. If you don't have that, I'm going to go on a limb and say it doesn't matter what vehicle you use because it's never going to resonate with that audience. Okay. But to add on to that, whatever vehicles they do choose, we would, because you said billboards, we're big fans of things that you can track, right? Being able to track billboard, you can't really track. People argue, yeah, you can put a QR code, but is that realistic? When someone's driving down the road. But my point is, you want to learn from every single thing you do, so you get better and better and better. And so yeah, it's sorry, I can't really answer that question because I don't think there is an answer to that question because everything is so different. But I would go back to emphasize if you're not saying the right thing, it's just never going to work.
It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Doesn't matter, you'll get some early adopters probably, but it won't go much further than that. And I think that's where most companies look at it and they go, wow, my marketing just doesn't work. Well, when we look at it, say you're in the right places, you're just not saying the right thing.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I like to ask that question because I feel like some people are very I've spoken to people who are very passionate about certain marketing avenues and think that that is gonna be successful for almost everyone, and I always tend to disagree. I've spoken to people who are very passionate about email marketing, and I think email marketing can work, but I don't think it can work on every industry because not everybody is checking emails, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and you have filters that are more and more sophisticated that are blocking
Yeah.
out more and more emails but there's I think also companies need to look at acquisition versus retention marketing, right? Certain tools for, acquisition, which is most people think of when it comes to marketing, right? Getting new customers, versus, certain vehicles like email and so forth work really well for retention. And that is you have customers, every company, everybody right now who's listening to this podcast, as we speak, there are other companies out there trying to steal their customers. As we speak, that's happening. So what are they doing to make sure their customers don't leave? What are they doing to make sure that their customers are staying
Yeah.
and see the value in their company? And many companies don't realize that, and many companies uh, don't even look at that as a target for them. They just look at acquisition. So,
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind as well.
That totally makes sense, and I think it's a great way note to end this podcast. But before we finish, I do have a game prepared for us, John. I don't know if you like to play games, if you'd be down to play.
I could win.
Um, honestly, I don't think you can win because
Oh,
nobody has ever won.
gosh. All right.
If you were still game, I would love to play it with you.
All right, let's do it.
If you do win, you will be the first winner of the game, and you will get a very happy face from me.
Oh, good. All right, that's
Right. So I'm preparing my phone with a 1 minute timer. And basically, I will ask you a set of 20 questions, and I'm going to see how many we can get through in 1 minute.
20
Um,
questions. Wow. Okay.
yeah. They're not marketing related. Don't worry. They're not things that you have to like think of. They're very easy. I think they're about yourself. But if nothing comes to mind, my advice is just say whatever, even if it's not true. And so that you can win.
Oh, all right.
And we'll see if we can get through all 20 in a minute.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to start right now in 3, 2, 1. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early bird or night owl?
Early.
Favorite social media platform?
Facebook.
Go-to karaoke song?
Billy Idol. White Winning.
Books or podcasts?
Podcasts.
One word that describes you?
Honest.
Dream vacation destination?
London.
Most used app on your phone?
Oh my gosh. Mailed.
Favorite emoji?
Happy face.
Hidden talent?
Sorry.
Hidden talent?
Bad singer.
Go-to comfort food?
Hamburger.
Superpower you'd want for a day?
Superman.
Who inspires you the most?
My wife.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Ice cream.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Helping people.
Biggest pet peeve?
Oh, darn. No, whatever.
Actually, oh my gosh, you did so well. You went through 17 questions.
Oh.
I've never been able to get someone to get through so many. So most people always stop at like 14. I think the highest I did was like 15. So you did pretty good.
Oh, well, that's good.
We only had like 3 more questions to go. So you're the number one so far, unless someone else comes along and does all 20. But don't worry, nobody has.
Well, so competitive, so I feel good about that.
You're the top dog right now, so don't worry. Now, John, it's been great having you on the podcast today. But before we finish, I know I already said that, but this is the last thing, I promise. If anything that we spoke about resonated with anybody listening, for those who want to learn more about Challenger brand marketing, who want to connect with you, who want to work with you, what's the best place to reach you? Or if you want to plug anything, the space is yours.
Oh, that's very kind. Nothing to plug, but if they want to reach me, our website is gumas.com, gumas.com. My email is jgumas@gumas.com.
Awesome. I will be adding the links to your website and your email to the description of this video so that anybody who wants to reach out to you can do that. And if anybody is listening and wants to do that, go to the video. And everyone else, I will see you on the next episode. John, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks, Daniela. That was fun.
It was so fun having you.
Oh, thank you.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.